Good morning, friends. We have the good fortune on this episode 6 of the Chlorophyll podcast, celebrating our 25th anniversary. We have the privilege of having Meetul Patel. This is going to be a journey into a totally new area. It's not to do with corporate brands, it's not to do with product brands, not service brands. And before we talk about Meetul and his job as the president of the Wadhwani Foundation, I think Meetul himself has a unique story. So let's hear it from him. So Meetul, from chemical engineering to consulting in the Big Four to Microsoft to now suddenly a brand that is all about social impact. What was the journey like? What were the triggers?
No, hey, Kiran, first of all, congratulations to you and the team on that 25th year. I'm sure it's been an exciting journey for you. But I think, look, you're making me feel old because the question makes me reflect back, right, on my 50 years to see what happened and how did I end up where I am right now and with the cause that the foundation's working on. So I think there's probably two major arcs to the story. The first one is the journey to India itself, because I think this is where impact can be made. And, I really kicked into focusing on that. And the second is the journey to the mission itself within that.
Right.
And so let's talk about journey to India. So I'm actually approaching the 100th anniversary of my grandfather's departure from India to go to Zimbabwe. So it's, I think, in the next couple of years, very close. We'll be at 100 years since he left Gujarat and ended up in Zimbabwe. My parents were born in Africa. I was born in Africa. My wife was born in Africa. So Zimbabwe, in many ways, it feels like home to us. But then I went to college, like everyone hopes to the US. And I actually decided to study applied nuclear engineering when I was there. And I'm still super interested in that area and hope that someday I get back to it. But I soon realized that I wanted to see impact of my work faster, not do long-term research, etc., and really start seeing the output of that work, and decided to skip the whole engineering track and entered management consulting right out of undergrad, and joined what is now Accenture in management consulting, and then continued on that path on strategy consulting after going to Wharton. And those 90s and early 2000s, there were like lots of global trends going on, and I think I got to enjoy a lot of that and see a lot of that. We had IT beginning to become a critical part of businesses. We saw globalization becoming the norm and not something that people thought of strategically. We saw the internet beginning to change the lives of people, and even the startup euphoria that we now see in India. I remember experiencing that 20 years ago at its peak in the US. Yeah, exactly. Actually, all over the US. It wasn't even restricted to the Valley, right? It was just permeating everything, and everyone was working on that front. It was exciting. But after about 20 years in consulting, I just frankly started feeling bored. I could kind of predict what the next day was going to look like. And at the time, I was working with Capgemini, and I was like thinking about what to do. And it turned out that Capgemini was looking to set up a management consulting unit in India, and suggested that if I was bored, then take the challenge of doing something new and exciting in a new market. And honestly, India wasn't remotely on my radar. I had very little connection beyond my heritage. Like I said, it'd been 100 years since my family had left, and had very little family, and perhaps visited twice, I think, when I was 7 years old, and maybe once a decade after that. But I agreed to come and take a look. And Kiran, I think you're in Mumbai, and Mumbai did it for me. I came to Mumbai, and I think within hours something just clicked. Right, there's buzz, there's excitement. That city was just incredible. It felt pretty much like that vibe we had in the startup euphoria across the. And so we made a really quick decision to move the family to India for 2 years, maybe 3 years was the plan, and just enjoy and experience in this environment and the challenge. Um, but it's 15 years now, so something obviously right, kept us here. And then, so that's how we ended up in India after this almost 80, 90-year journey of the family. But now the mission. And while I was in Mumbai, Microsoft had reached out to me to join its leadership team. And look, when you're in Mumbai, I think you get a very clear view of the incredible potential of India, right? Everyone's trying to aim for something. Things are developing. You get pushed to actually think big because dreams are big in Mumbai everywhere you turn. And I began to shift more towards this goal of big impact. It began to sit there because as much as you see success, but you also see the challenges of people there right in your face. You cannot avoid it.
Yes.
So it began to sit there, like, how can I make more impact? How can we do that? And at the time, I was beginning to develop a view that technology would be a critical platform for tapping into the potential of the country. It still wasn't being used to the extent it was in the US or other places. And I felt that perhaps I could make more of a contribution and impact through that and helping the technology platforms emerge than through individual solutions. And so I decided to join Microsoft. And that journey has been incredible, right? It was incredible. Between those 10 years, between 2012 and 2022-ish, just remarkable for India. It was a time of incredible growth of physical infrastructure, roads and bridges, buildings. I mean, I would move to Gurgaon and you could see a city literally come up around. And it was just it's probably once in a lifetime experience I could possibly have. But what was not so obvious was that there was a technology infrastructure that was being built at the same time. And this infrastructure that, was rooted in this notion of cloud, which back then was just a new concept, was fundamental to democratizing access to technology because the costs got reduced so much for small businesses and individuals, but also sparked and supported the development of the startup ecosystem because you could access infrastructure that historically would have cost you a tremendous amount by tapping into the cloud and starting a business. And so that technology infrastructure that was being built was very exciting. And through the period of that decade, billions were poured into the development of this platform that could be utilized by, the entire population of the country. And I felt pretty good about the time there. I said, look, I'm working hard. I've got a great team. I'm a part of a really interesting ecosystem, and we've made a little contribution here. And especially when the startups started forming, you're like, maybe we did something here and helped. I felt pretty good about, at least the time I had invested. But then COVID hits. And about 6 months before COVID, I had shifted my role from being the COO of Microsoft in India to working on strategic growth initiatives that focused on those who haven't yet adopted technology. Now, in this role, I found myself in some pretty surreal. Sorry, were you saying something, Yeah.
Interesting. I said interesting, that shift.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, it was COVID hits you, and you kind of get these very surreal moments during that pandemic. And, I think I began to become acutely aware, like I think many of us were, of the privilege we actually had. Me, my colleagues, my family, we faced our challenges, but we were safe. We were working from home. We had access to things if we absolutely needed it. At the same time, I was working with the government as a result of that role. And you could see the challenges of millions of people. You could see millions of people walking hundreds of miles to try and reach the safety of their homes. You could see hundreds of millions of people struggling to get basic services like access to food delivery or healthcare. And that real stark, juxtaposition between the world I was in and the world others were living in just sat with me. Right? It just sat there like this. There's something strange about what's going on here, or something that became much more obvious to me, at least. And so that satisfaction I talked about, that I had about making whatever little contribution I could have, kind of started diminishing because I began to feel that the progress we had enabled from a technology perspective for a lot of folks was clearly not translated to the lived reality of the majority of people. And
Right.
so as things settled a bit with the end of the pandemic, I took some time with the help of Microsoft to explore deeper this problem. And at that point, I spoke to a lot of folks that were not in the technology ecosystem. Lots of conversations, research to understand, what is going on here. And I think I netted down to the realization that there are three distinct worlds. World one is the world of those with surplus. People like me, like you, where we have something discretionary that allows us to do things and live a life. I can go out to a movie. You can travel. You can afford to get new experiences for your children by sending them to a school. So whatever it is, there's some surplus that allows us to experience something more than what we would have to do day to day. Maybe there's 100 to 200 million people in India, 300 million people that have that luxury, so to speak, today. But that was it. Then there was the second world, what I call world two, which is the world of those living on the edge of sustenance. Here, globally, there's probably 3 or 4 billion people, maybe closer to a billion in India, where you're living on the edge. You're surviving, but you're struggling. You don't have a decent living standard. And what does that mean? It means something as basic as permanent shelter, bricked, solid walls around you, or mechanized transport where you don't have to walk and use your own physical energy to get from place to place, or that you have heating when it's cold, or you have cooling when it's hot. The very basics: nutrition, clean water. And really huge part of the world's population, and in India, still set in that area. And then the third world, the world three, is the world of those dealing with survival. Here you're worried about whether you're going to live or die next day. The ones that are subject to war or famine or hunger or disease. And when you start spreading out, you begin to realize that there are very distinct parts of society out there. And the world of surplus is doing well. All this economic growth we see is accruing to a few 100 million people here, and we're seeing all of that benefit. That city I'm seeing growing around me, that's the success of world one. And even world three, the one of survival, has made remarkable progress. I just remember when I left Zimbabwe, we were talking about starvation and we were talking about famines around the world. And today we don't worry about that nearly as much. And so billions of people have been taken out of that poverty, that survival line.
Yeah.
So we made progress at the two ends, but in this world too, the people living on the edge of sustenance, we stuck at that 3 or 4 billion mark, and maybe several hundred, 5, 6, 700 million to a billion people in India. And that was the area that I felt, was the one that probably needed attention. So you begin to ask the question, some questions come to your mind, right, that get you to a conclusion on what you might want to do. The first question is like, why does this even persist? Why do we have world one and world three working well, but not world two? Right? And, maybe, and the thing, the conclusion is it's economics in some part, that, in survival mode, just $2 or $3 a day can make a difference. Something that, and $2 or $3 a philanthropy can support, government aid and redistribution through taxes can work. So you can make a difference, and you can get some trickle down of things like medicines, etc., coming in. So you can make a huge difference with that. But for those living on the edge of sustenance, it's not $2 or $3. It's 5 times that, right? You need like $10. Now here, it's not about distribution. It's not about charity. And in fact, the answer probably shouldn't be about redistribution and charity. And so the problem itself was 5 to 10 times bigger. Just in sheer economic terms to go resolve. So what's the solution? That's a hard one. But at its core, I think you would say that, look, this world too needs sustainable income, right? Through employment or value production. It cannot be about giving. It has to actually create an engine of its own, where you can develop economically and create jobs. So why isn't this problem solved yet is the next question you ask. And you say, look, it's hard. It's just a really, really hard problem. It's not that governments haven't tried. They've tried. They haven't been able to solve it fast enough. You see the steady progress, but it has to really be much faster if you're going to not have generations struggle through this. And so they've been trying to work through economic policy and programs to make it happen. Charity can't fix it because there's no easy template.
Correct.
Right? If
You
I want to
mentioned
help,
sustainable. Yeah.
yeah, it has to be sustainable. And it just even the template, the solution, because in charity, you ask yourself, okay, I want to help someone with cancer. There's cancer research centers, there's hospitals. You know where to go and help. But if I say I want to create lots of jobs, where do you go? In education, you know where to go to university. So there's a template through which we can contribute. But in this one here, it isn't so obvious what that may be. And of course, corporates aren't going to pay any attention because there's no real immediate return. By definition, they don't have surplus to give. And so with the size, the need, right, the lack of focus on this, I felt that maybe this is where I may make a better marginal contribution going forward. There wasn't much more I could add to the world of surplus. It was already doing well, and lots of people were playing on it. In the world of survival, there were lots of people with lots of answers trying to work on it, but in the edge of sustenance, they just weren't. And so I decided to say that's probably where I should spend my time. And that's the story of how I ended up here. So long story, few arcs, but I think it's a journey they go
lovely, through. Lovely insights. So it's been 2 years, Meetul, with the Wadhwani Foundation. And I remember it's been 2 years since we met, and lots of very interesting anecdotes from your life. But now that you have a taste of this big, hairy, audacious goal, do you have a sense of how the foundation, the Wadhwani Foundation, is doing it differently? And you mentioned that the conditions are similar in the global south, and that was one of the triggers you had, that you wanted to be a part of the team that affects not just India but the global south. So have you got a sense of how the Wadhwani Foundation's approach and impact is different from the others who are in the field?
Yeah, I think so. Fortunate enough that Ramesh Wadhwani had picked a similar problem, right? That the mission of the foundation is to change lives by accelerating growth to create family-sustaining jobs for millions. So I think what's different is first an understanding of the scale that you're trying to impact. Because solutions may work at a certain scale, but they fail at another. So we start off with this notion that if you're going to affect and have a major impact, you have to think about scale. And you start with a clear understanding of the problem. So think about it. India alone has over 10 million people, youth, women, farmers, entering the workforce every single year. That's the entire population of Zimbabwe each year, right? That's once you understand that that's the goal, you start thinking about solutions that fit that challenge. Right? So that's front and center in our minds as a foundation. How can we make change happen at scale? And so the question is, how do you do that? And the natural solution has been capital and infrastructure and policy. So again, lots of people work on that. And the foundation sees this as being absolutely necessary, but you need to take that platform and you have to convert it into real output. And what that means is that new businesses have to be formed, and ideally big businesses that can create huge value and help new sectors form. But at the same time, you have to help existing businesses grow faster, and they have to outpace the productivity gains that technology can provide, for example, so that they can keep adding jobs. And this is especially true for small and medium businesses, which hold most of the jobs in the global south. So we take the big goal and say, go focus on helping startups form, helping small businesses grow in parts for creating jobs. And we have other programs that I'll cover, in a bit. But the challenge, and then you say, okay, good. How do you solve that problem as a foundation? Again, compared to what others may be dealing with. Everyone has their part. This is ours. We say, look, the challenge is that small businesses and startups and entrepreneurs just don't have access to these resources that can help them in that journey. And there's probably, besides the capital, besides the policy, there's probably four things that a business or an entrepreneur needs. First, they need a coach. They need someone to guide them and help them through the journey. And Microsoft had the
Right.
benefit of amazing leaders and peers to help me, but just don't have that. And so you need that coaching. You need skilling. If you don't have the right skills, even the greatest ideas aren't going to go anywhere. They can't take off. You need to kind of like actually build your own capability. And not everyone has the luxury of, say, the business school education I was fortunate enough to have. You have to have expertise, because your knowledge and skills may take you so far, but at some point you outgrow your own capacity and the capacity of the organization. So you need to get access to the right people. So expertise is the third thing. And the fourth thing is community, because what really happens is when they start organically helping each other in ecosystems like Silicon Valley, like Bangalore, and you begin to see things thrive. So these four areas are what we try and provide through our programs to various folks. So why is it important? Because you think these are obvious. And if you think about it, places like Silicon Valley and Bangalore, like I mentioned, can have some of these through the coffee shops and the incubators and the accelerators. But if you think about it, that's probably 1,000 entrepreneurs across India that can benefit from that. Or for small businesses, you can't even find an equivalent concept. There is no
Right.
incubator a small business can go to that's good and solid the way startup ecosystems are. So it's just not there. Now we have 1 million SMBs in India. We have several hundred million youth, right, that are out there. Imagine if you could just take 1% of those and give them access to the resources that allowed all of these other great startups and businesses to form. That untapped potential in the global south, you can just unlock incredible amounts of potential that can drive so many more jobs. So we solve these four problems at a certain scale. I think that's what makes us different. That's what we've been trying to focus
on. Mr. Ramesh Wadhwani is on record. He recently made an extremely challenging statement saying it's not that India should adopt AI, but it is India's responsibility to be the leader in AI. Would you say that technology has been a great facilitator for the Wadhwani Foundation? It has been
on.
harnessed well to match the scale that you are trying to reach. Would you say
Yeah,
that?
I'd say, look, I'd say that we have been doing it, but I think the potential is incredible thanks to AI now. So look, technology is very much in our ethos, right, in our
Yeah.
DNA, just because of Romesh, just because of the team that we've built it. So we keep that in the front of mind. But I think the exciting story is what we're building now to take it to the next level. Look, I think the challenge you see in those businesses we're trying to help, or the students we're trying to help, or the entrepreneurs we're trying to help, is that you can have all the generic concepts. I can skill you. Let's just take one example, skilling. I can
Okay.
skill you on marketing, and
Okay.
theoretically it's okay if I'm in academia, because I may end up applying it in lots of different ways if I understand the theory. But as an entrepreneur who's trying to survive for the next
Mm.
3 months, or a small business that is trying to run an operation, or a leader that's trying to run an operation and also initiate a new, doesn't have the luxury of saying some theory and then trying to figure out how to
Yes.
extrapolate them, right?
Absolutely.
They need very contextual information at the time that fits their sector, their industry, their situation, and get something very practical. Now, that was just not possible historically. You'd go and spend, a year building some program, you package it up, you deliver it in one place, you may have to translate it in another language, but it couldn't make 1,000 variations of that. Artificial intelligence can help you with it. So you can
Right.
take that typically superficial support that has to be genericized because for scale, and instead keep it custom and keep it practical. So the platforms we've been building and we started taking out there are more AI centric and AI first, so that the value they deliver are much higher. And I think this is what's going to make them the big difference. We had
Mm.
technology that would deliver content like video or skilling or do remote communication to provide coaching or counseling. That's there, and that has been there. But AI is what takes it and allows us to really bring it down to the individual challenge that beneficiaries have. So a lot of our team's efforts goes into harnessing that. And to the point that Romesh made, I think one of the most exciting things is that India, because of our talent, because of our breadth and diversity, because of our own need to resolve this problem, is the ideal place for us to generate these types of solutions. We have the
Right.
talent, we have the challenge, we have the places to go and try and build and incubate this. And we are the natural exporter of this capability to the rest of the global south, where they may not have the same environment and context we have. So I do
Mhm.
agree that it's India's responsibility to harness the power of this, certainly for commercial, absolutely for helping people with social good.
Correct, correct. So we have about 5 minutes. I just wanted to. We started the journey of the brand together with you, Mitul, 2 years ago. You want to talk about how the changes we made in the brand product mix have also helped the Wadhwani Foundation?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think I'll start by sharing why brand matters, because I think that's where you also would have come from. Most
Yeah,
importantly, it helps ensure that those that can use our help know we're here, right? They know that at least directionally we're there and know that they can put their hand up and tap into certain resources that we may be
correct,
able to provide.
correct,
But
correct.
it also helps draw the talent that we need to pursue this big, challenging, ambitious mission. And it brings pride to our team. They go through struggling hard work that doesn't always go in a straight line to success. And they need to remember why they're there. And the brand kind of helps in all three facets. And I think that's kind of where we started with for the
Right.
rationale for doing it. But here's why I think it's difficult, and you had to deal with the difficulty of this and help navigate us through it, is that the foundation maintains a very systems approach to realizing this mission. And as a result of that systems approach, we have a number of major initiatives. We have the Wadhwani Innovation Network that's focused on innovation for sector development, working at the highest end of academia and college campuses and researchers. We have the Wadhwani Entrepreneurship Network that focuses on job creation, which I've been speaking about for quite a bit. We have the Wadhwani Skilling Network, which deals with skills development for students in high school and VTIs and ITIs on the jobs. We have the Wadhwani Global Government Digital Transformation Centers, which focus on maximizing the efficiency of the government. So you have all these initiatives, and within each initiative, you have several programs that can add up to that initiative. And within each program, you may have a different set of beneficiaries, from students to entrepreneurs to incubators to senior government officials. And then you take this and you say, I have to go across dozens of countries with different cultural traits, from
Correct.
Brazil to Mexico to South Africa to Indonesia, right, to Egypt and India. And then the programs manifest themselves in different channels. The physical events and classrooms, there's online, there's websites, there's apps, there's the platform, the AI tutors. You have all of that. And so it manifests. And that's part of the challenge of creating a brand with all of that diversity that we kind of like tasked you to kind of like help us with, right?
Right.
And while that's one element, the other part is what you want it to do for you. We wanted to support our roles. We wanted people to know our role in different formats, democratizing access, helping individuals at the same time, come across and build their businesses or achieve their new innovations. We have to capture our unique approach. And I think this was another element that had to be very different.
Correct.
We're unique in the way we're approaching the challenges. We operate like a high growth, high innovation tech organization focused on social good. And so
Yes.
capturing that while being a nonprofit and a philanthropy is a really interesting and possibly unique challenge that you to bring. And then we have a
Yes.
legacy. We don't lose a legacy. We have to bring that legacy of 20 years of contribution that Romesh has made through the various programs and the foundation has made through various programs, and keep that and build momentum on that. And I think that's the coherent identity challenge that was important
Correct.
that you came up with. And it didn't happen overnight. I think the strategy helped, work you did with us helped surface that identity and align all of these different players against what that
One
identity
align.
was.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's see,
And
Mithun. Let me just check if there are any questions from the audience, all our friends out there. You've given us a fantastic backdrop to the entire uh, work that you're doing. Okay, no questions. So I have one last one for you, Mithul. Uh, how has it changed? How has this new role changed you as a human being?
um, I think you get a profound sense of your privilege. You begin to appreciate what you have because you see
Wonderful.
so many people, right, working as hard as you, trying as hard as you, with as much ambition as you, not having just that little thing that they need to make that happen. So I think without a doubt, you begin to realize how much you have, but you also get a sense of how much you have to do or you can do. And so there's an urgency that grows in you
Correct.
when you see this. And I think that sense of privilege and the urgency to kind of like share what I have or what I can give to everybody else is probably what's changed the most in the last 18 months for me.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, Mithul, Chlorophyll has already thanked you in private. So, it is now time to thank you in public. So, two thanks to you. Thank you, Mithul. And one thank you to our listeners out there. Thank you for tuning in and stay happy and stay alert for the next episode in the next month. Thank you, Mithul.
Great. Thank you, Karan. Thanks to the team.
Bye. Bye.